This is part 2 of the Craftsman 6x48 Belt Disc Sander Rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 1, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will be disassembling all of the sub-assemblies. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. Starting with the pedestal base, there are 2 bolts that have been screwed into the bottom. We're going to be removing them. But if you don't know what these threaded holes are for in the pedestal base, then I recommend you check out my Pedestal Tool Stand video, and I'll place a link for it here. Anyway, we're just going to remove them. The previous owner probably put them in there to help level the tool stand. Here we have the base for the belt sander, and we are going to be removing the support rod. It has a nut on it that kind of jams the rod into the base. As you can see, that rod has been cut up pretty significantly. We're probably going to be fabricating a replacement. I'm not sure why would you do that, but yep. Unless the belt on the back side of the table was cutting into it when it was laying flat. Who knows? Next, we're going to be disassembling the belt table. So, looking at what we're dealing with here. You've got your drive pulley down at the bottom on the right hand side and the idler pulley up on the left side. And I'm just looking at those tension adjustments. So we've got this one screw here. We're just going to go ahead and remove it. Now I don't even know what it goes to. And to remove the drive pulley, we've got some retaining rings, so we'll skip that for now. We're going to remove the 2 locking knobs for the idler pulley. Basically, as you turn the adjustment knobs, which is the knob that's still there on the bottom side, it raises or lowers these 2 rods, and these 2 locking nuts or locking knobs lock those rods in place. Now we can pull out the idler pulley assembly. We'll disassemble that in a minute. Just set it aside for now. We'll go ahead and remove the 2 adjustment knobs. Pretty simple system. So they have these little screws that just lock the knobs into the rod that they're on. And this is one of those areas that, depending on which model you have, this section may be a little bit different. And we'll do the same for the other side. And on my 6x48 belt disc sander, it's very different. It's a completely different setup than what we've got here. Alright, so that's the top end. So now we've got that drive pulley. So we need to remove that retaining ring first. And I'll get it here in a second. There we go. There's one on the other side as well. There we go. So what I haven't noticed just yet is on the other side, there is a retaining ring on the outer race of the bearing. So there's a set screw that's in the center of the pulley. And we're going to remove it, and that locks the pulley to the shaft. Sometimes there's two set screws in there, one on top of the other. So we'll get that one out of there, and then we're going to check it to make sure there's not another one in there. Grab a flashlight, look down in there. Okay, so at this point I'm going to attempt to tap the drive shaft through the bearings. And this is because I didn't take the time to really look at the parts diagram, which would have shown and told me that there are some retaining rings on the other side of the bearings as well. But now I'm seeing that that external retaining ring on the outer race of the bearing. So we're going to get that off of there. There we go. Now remember that this shaft on the left hand side, kind of just under my hand right now, there is a key on the shaft. So that means we can't drive the shaft to the right. We've got to drive it to the left. So as we start tapping, we can see that both of the bearings are shifting left, so the whole shaft is shifting left. tap it back into place. Get some WD-40 on this stuff. We can drive it down to where the key is. Of course, we can remove the key as well, but at that time I really wasn't thinking about pulling the keys out of the shaft yet. So I think at this point I just want to kind of get the bearings to move on the shaft itself and kind of open up that space between the two bearings. That'll let us see a little bit more of what's going on the inside of the shaft area between the two bearings. So we'll use a puller to go ahead and get that bearing on the right off of the shaft. And we'll just speed this footage up. And that bearing will come off of there no problem. So there is a retaining ring on the shaft that the bearing butted up to. So we'll just remove that retaining ring. And now we should be able to drive the shaft all the way through. Now on some of these models, they will have a water pump bearing in there, and working with those is a real pain in the butt. So here we're going to go ahead and remove that retaining ring that actually sits on the back side of the bearing that we're still looking at on the shaft. Just slide it down the shaft. And if you don't know what a water pump bearing is, it's basically a shaft that's hard mounted inside a bearing. So you can't really remove the bearings from the shaft, and the only thing you can do is attempt to repack those bearings. But on this model, luckily, there are individual bearings that we can remove. Alright, so here we are over at the vise, and we're going to disassemble this drive shaft. And to do that, we've got to remove these two keys. There's one on the left there of the bearing, and then there's one that's kind of in the center of the shaft, and that's actually where the that set screw locks the pulley to the shaft. So both of these keys are standard half moon shape, and they come out. This one gave me a little bit of trouble, but I ended up knocking it off of the table, but no big deal. And with that, we can go ahead and get this bearing off of the shaft. And driving it through is not going to work as well as I had hoped. So what we're going to end up doing is put a puller on this and just pull the bearing off of the shaft. At this point, I'm being kind of careful with these bearings because I'm not entirely sure I can get replacement bearings. So worst case scenario, we can clean up and repack these bearings and then reuse them. So I'm trying not to damage the shields on them. Really just trying to remove them with as small amount of damage that can be caused to them. And then if we can get the replacement bearings, then cool, no problem. But as I've found on some of these older tools, especially ones that use like an inch standard bearing instead of metric, they can be hard to get a hold of. Sometimes even if you can find them, companies want ridiculous amounts of money for them. But we'll figure all that out later on. Right now we're just going to get it off of the shaft. And there we go. Alright, so here we are with the idler pulley, and there are roll pins that connect the two rods to the main shaft of it. And we're just going to knock those roll pins out. Using a punch, of course. So we've got one off of there. This other side gave me a little bit more trouble, so I took it over to the vise. Which is where we should have done it to begin with. We can just drive that roll pin out of there. I'm trying to keep it from falling to the floor, but screw it. All right. There we go. So these bearings have retaining rings on them. There's retaining rings on the shaft itself, locking the bearing in place, and then there are outer retaining rings on each one of the bearings that lock the bearing so it won't go any deeper inside the pulley. So once I got that first retaining ring off, flipped it over, removed that other retaining ring, And I'll pull it off of the vise here in a second and kind of show you the outer retaining ring. So if you can see, I'm going to point kind of at the gap in that outer retaining ring. So we've got to get something in there and expand that gap. And this took a while. But I finally got it. So I took out a bunch of the footage of me messing with it for like 20 minutes. Now that we've kind of got an idea of how to do it, we can do it on this side a little bit quicker. So using that one long pick and the retaining ring pliers is the way to go. Once you've got it started, you can hook that pick on the back side of it and then kind of just lift it all up. Like that. Alright, so now we need to get that shaft out of there, and it's still got bearings on it. A little WD-40 to help it along. We'll just drive it. And then just get a brass punch to push it the rest of the way through. Like so. So now there's still two bearings inside this pulley. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the brass punch to press on the inner race and push the bearing out like that. Kind of like you do on a quill for a drill press. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Too easy. So next we're going to disassemble this table, and it's missing some parts that we're going to have to fabricate. So we'll remove the lock screw for the rod, the support rod. And that rod is still in there pretty good, so we'll take it over to the vise. And we're just going to drive that rod through. Now it's moving pretty good. Try to catch it with my left leg. There we go. And the pins that this angle support ride on is they're threaded on both sides, and on this side closest to the camera it has a slot in it for a flat tip. The other side does not. I was just checking to see if it did or not. So once you've removed the one closest to the camera, then we can pull the table off of it and then remove the other one by hand. It's still sitting in there. There it goes. So you can kind of see. And then the one on the other end, we can just screw it off like so. Next, we'll just remove this screw and nut that's in here, and it's supposed to help connect the parts that we're missing. So we'll have to figure out all of that after we get all this stuff cleaned up. So there will be some fabrication that needs to take place. And then we can put the nut inside the vise and then screw that screw out of it. It's got that little 1/4 inch square head on it. And a lot of paint. And there we go. So next we just need to remove that adjustment knob and assembly there. So I'm going to grab this end of it with the vise grip. And then grab on to the threaded section and kind of work it loose. Once we have that part off, then we can go ahead and remove the knob and then the 2 nuts and then get it out of there. That section where the knob is threaded as well. But that is going to wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. In the next video, we will disassemble the motor and then probably get to soaking these parts in some simple green and derusting them and all that good stuff. So as always, I appreciate the support. If you got any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. And I will see you next time.